tension today. Underpinning these defensive and bureaucratic motivations is a particular nationalistic version of history. The official Chinese view is that only Chinese ships ever use the South China Sea, therefore, China has historic rights to waters inside its 9-line claim. In July 2016, an International Arbitral Tribunal in The Hague ruled there were no legitimate grounds for China to claim historic rights. Nonetheless, the argument of claims based on historic rights continues to be the predicate for the ongoing conflict between China and neighboring Southeast Asian states. The United States, as noted previously, has tended to discount the territorial elements and focus only on issues regarding their view of China's comprehensive strategy. Not only is this, once more, a misrating of Chinese strategy, it is a miscalculation which could be a harbinger of future conflict. Should the issue of entitlement not be taken seriously, it could predispose to conflict, and the latter cannot be resolved by any display of Western military prowess. The fundamental cause of China's sense of historically based entitlement needs to be understood as a reality for China. It won't go away by itself. China's view is that it is essentially correcting mistreatments and wrongs that were historically perpetrated against it. A concern is that the other countries in the dispute do not appreciate the importance of this view held by China. For China, it is a matter of principle. Moreover, from Beijing's vantage point, they are essentially reclaiming lost territory. Any behavior by a foreign power to obstruct the reunification of what is considered sovereign territory will be countered, including a verdict by an International Arbitral Tribunal. It is simply another chapter in a protracted story of foreign efforts to carve up Chinese territory to take something from China. If policymakers in the U.S. ignore the motivating power of China's historical narrative, territorial imperative, and sense of humiliation driving it, then Western leadership understands neither China's objectives nor the Chinese mind. Neither diplomacy, talk, nor confrontation, action, will diminish the motivation behind China's actions in the South China Sea. Western military encroachment may impede Chinese movements in the short term, but it will also manifest great frustration and provoke calls for an even more assertive response. What will remain, unreservedly, is China's commitment to and strong presence in the South China Sea, the defense of its coast, sea lanes, and nuclear deterrent. China's strategic reasons for maintaining a strong presence in the CCS are not negotiable. They are predicated upon existential needs, driven by prior humiliation. The status quo, however, is also deleterious to China's interests. The recent encirclement of much smaller Philippine vessels and injuring of Filipino servicemen at the hands of Chinese maritime forces will reinforce international concerns over China's rise as a major power. And China's newly imposed regulations against trespassing foreigners across its claimed territories in the South China Sea only raise the risk of accidental clashes and casualties. In an article for the South China Morning Post, Professor Richard Haydarian, chairholder in geopolitics at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, asserts, as an aspiring leader in Asia, China can ill afford to be seen as a bully and, worse, risk an armed confrontation with the Philippines and potentially the United States, which has reiterated its commitment to help in an event of a contingency in the South China Sea. It is therefore incumbent on China, as the more powerful party, to re-examine its approach to the Philippines in favor of de-escalation, and mutually beneficial agreements. On its part, the Marcos administration should ensure that it maintains robust communication channels with China, avoids getting dragged into a US-led Asian NATO, and engages with the rest of ASEAN to pursue an inclusive and stable regional order. Yet, tensions in the region are also being fed and will continue to be exacerbated by the activities of the US and its allies. Western naval vessels are routinely sent on so-called freedom of navigation missions through the area claimed by Beijing as its exclusive economic zone. If there is ever to be mutually beneficial agreements and some degree of trust between the states proximate to the South China Sea, foreign powers must be distanced from any negotiations at an international forum to hear grievances, disputes, and global commons access to the South China Sea. China will not allow her access to the commercial sea lanes be restricted. To do otherwise would be an existential threat to her. There remains a course of action to pursue, other than potential conflict, if the states in the region can distance themselves from the economic and political influence of the West. All states with an interest in a peaceful solution to the South China Sea disputes need to take China's view of history seriously. In doing so, the following suggested actions by the interested parties should be considered at least as a preliminary course to avoid conflict. First, there must be removed from the discourse regarding the South China Sea those states that have no valid territorial claim in or relating to the CSCS, United States, UK, EU, etc. Second, all claimants to islands, reefs, and waters within the South China Sea must have a specified period of time in which to determine their claims and file them with the appropriate international concern. Third, a South China Sea summit-level organization should be convened to settle discrepancies in the claims, but essentially to develop a strategy whereby each country is accorded the right to participate in the development of natural resources of this CS. Fourth, the claimants to territory within the confines of the South China Sea must enter into an agreement, treaty, whereby each agrees to withdraw all military material, including personnel, from disputed territories. Fifth, the signatories agree not to utilize any territorial possession for military purposes or deploy any material that could be used for military purposes. Having suggested the above, there will be substantial pushback from the West regarding this approach to conflict resolution. Their economic and political interests are not advantaged by resolving the South China Sea dispute unless it is accomplished on terms favorable to the West, economically and politically. As long as there is tension in the region, these external power brokers will foster a position that makes peaceful resolution to disputes cumbersome at best. Time and economics are on their side.